Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the JLC Kollel of Western Monmouth County Thursday night inspirational speeches, inspirational events. First and foremost, we're going to start off, of course, by thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, thanking Hashem. That's the entire reason that we're here tonight. 4 years ago, at approximately the same time of the year, as everyone I'm sure is aware, the IDF, by the help of Hashem, was able to uncover dozens upon dozens of underground mazes of tunnels that the Palestinian Hamas Authority had built in preparation of an attack that the reports say was due to ensue on Rosh Hashanah Day, where they intended to sneak in the middle of the night while our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael have finished their meal and are getting ready to start a new year, and they were planning on a massive slaughter throughout Eretz Yisrael, wherever they could reach and wherever their tunnels could make it to. And through the amazing nisim that Hashem does, especially in Eretz Yisrael, where Hashem's eyes never leave from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, through some miracles of people who needed wheat for matzah, and they were looking for specific fields that they needed to cultivate in order to be able to make matzahs for Pesach. One big mitzvah, I'm sure with other different pretenses, that was the catalyst which revealed to the IDF and opened their eyes to what Hamas was planning to do to our family in Eretz Yisrael. And as we know, Chazal tell us that our avos, our forefathers, instill in us certain attributes, certain strengths that they instill in us. One of those strengths and one of those things that we pride ourselves on is Hakar Satov, is gratitude to those who do good to us. So 4 years ago when this happened, it was something that could not be looked over. It was an event that, if it would go unnoticed and unthanked, I think would reflect negatively upon us. But Baruch Hashem, we came together as a community 4 years ago, and we decided that something so big that saved thousands and thousands of lives needs to be recognized, and we need to come together for at least one night a year and say thank you to Hashem and thank Him for what He did for us. Consequently of that night, started the weekly Thursday night learning program that ensues every Thursday night, and tonight is this time of year is actually the 4th year in which we are doing every Thursday night a learning program with Cholent and Kogel and Nicole in Western Monmouth County who enforced and reinforced to make sure that we have people here Thursday night learning. And it was an amazing start to what we have here tonight. So this evening we've dedicated this night to my 3 grandparents who are no longer with us. Those grandparents who instilled in the Sephardi way the appreciation for Judaism, and which led my parents to lead us into the derech of Torah. Of course, I would not be here if it wasn't for my wife, Baruch Hashem, who's giving me the strength to be able to stand up here, and the confidence that she instills in me. So thank you. And last but certainly not least, Rabbi David Rosenthal, who has been the spearheader of putting together these Thursday night programs, which is why there is a suggested $10 donation in tonight's event. These events are not free; they cost money, but as you can see with the number of people in the room, they're effective, and you can have a share in that effect by giving a small donation, whatever you can. and helping us and helping Rabbi Rosenthal to continue to inspire us and to continue bringing these amazing speakers. And we're going to call upon Rabbi Rosenthal to tell us a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming. I will be brief. I want to thank the Danishrat family for sponsoring tonight's event. Just a little commercial, some future Thursday night events we have coming up. We will be having a night of inspiration with Rabbi Sheftel Neuberger, the president of Ner Israel Rabbinical College, the second biggest rabbinical college in the country. He's going to be here during Elul to speak about Rosh Hashanah and inspire us. The week after, we will be having Dr. Herman Presby to speak about finding God in a scientific world. And this Saturday night for the men at the Vasilevskis, there will be a swim and schwitz at 10 p.m. after Shabbos, which should be fun. Rabbi Becher is a man who needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. The first time I heard him was at a Gateways convention in Long Branch when I was 17, and the year after he came here in 2004 to speak about Mel Gibson's movie Passion of the Christ, which was awesome. Lethal Weapon is clearly a better Mel Gibson movie than Passion of the Christ. And the best part was the non-Jewish person who was trying to defend Jesus in the back and didn't stand a chance against Rabbi Becher. So Rabbi Becher, originally from Australia, is a senior lecturer of the Gateways organization and an instructor at Yeshiva University. He received his ordination from the Chief Rabbinate of Israel and the Chief Rabbi of Jerusalem and holds a master's in medieval Jewish history from the Bernard Revel Graduate School of Yeshiva University. He taught at Or Sameach and Neve Yerushalayim in Jerusalem for 15 years and also served as a chaplain in the Israel Defense Force. Rabbi Becher has answered thousands of questions on AskTheRabbi.org and presents a Talmud class, Dimensions of the Daf, on cable TV with the Jewish Broadcasting Service. Rabbi Becher's latest book, Gateway to Judaism, published by ArtScroll, is in its 9th printing. He's taught in the U.S., Canada, England, Israel, South Africa, Australia, Russia, and Manalapan. He's conducted tours in Africa, Asia, Australia, Europe, and Israel. He's a renowned Torah scholar, and he's also a massive scholar in general. He doesn't know this, but he kept me company driving to Yeshiva in Baltimore from Manalapan for many years, listening to his lectures. They are educational, entertaining, and inspiring. And without any further ado, Rabbi Becher.
Thank you for that introduction. I can hardly wait to hear myself speak. First of all, tonight is the 15th of Av, which is a significant occasion. If there are any singles here, we'll speak afterwards. And the 15th of Av is significant for a few reasons, but I want to discuss just one, which I think is relevant to tonight, which is the following. 15th of Av, the first time that it was actually recognized as something great was when the Jews were in the desert, 40 years in the desert. There was a decree that that generation who had listened to the negative reports of the spies, you're probably familiar with the story, Moses sends spies, 12 spies, they come back, they're with a very negative report. The Jews despair, give up hope, and a decree is made that they will die in the desert, that generation. And the next generation will go into Israel. And the Midrash tells us that every 9th of Av, every Tisha B'Av, which is the date when the decree was made, people would go out, dig graves, lie down in the graves, and in the morning wake up dead. Oh, whatever. Right? But basically, but you can imagine how it was like, excuse me, that's my grave. You know, that type of thing. Right? But anyway, so they did this. The last year, when the decree, unbeknown to the Jews, the decree was over. But they went out and dug the graves anyway and lay down. And in the morning they woke up alive. And they figured, what was their thought? They thought they'd made a miscalculation. Oh, we must be off. The calendar must be off. They didn't have smartphones, didn't have calendars, etc. Right? So they figured we're off. So they went out the next night, the 10th of Av, lay down in the graves, stayed alive. and they were staying alive for why is that funny? Right, for a number of days. And then finally, by the 15th of the month, it was clear to them they did not make a mistake. Because if you are the 15th of the month, the Jewish month is a lunar month, which means the 15th of the month is a full moon. If you're lying in the desert looking up, right, what do you see? A full moon. You cannot say, oh, I must have made a mistake. Hello, right? It's obviously the 15th of the month. So that was a day of celebration. But Maimonides, in his commentary on the Mishnah, puts it very beautifully. He says, at that moment, he says, He'eminu ba'atzmam, they believed in themselves, ubitchu benafsham, and trusted in their souls, v'hirgishu ratzon haboreh, v'siluk chamato. They felt the desire of God, the Creator, and the end of His anger. It's a beautiful expression, right? They believed in themselves, they trusted in their souls, and they felt the love and the desire of God for them. So that is the celebration. And why is it relevant? Because you've got to imagine the Jewish people, 2,000 years of exile, not an easy exile, and that's an understatement of the century. And you can imagine that, and especially after the Second World War, how much did the Jews have? Believing in God is relatively easy. Believing in the Jewish people is a little harder. Believing in yourself is very hard. And the Jews in the desert, way back then, they had no faith in themselves. They said, we don't have the merit, we don't have the ability, and we're just going to die in the desert. And on the 15th of Av was restored not just their faith in God's love for them, but was also restored their faith in themselves, which is really, really important. If you don't believe in yourself, you cannot build anything. And if you don't believe in what you're building, you cannot build anything. God Himself is described in the book of Deuteronomy, towards the very end of the Torah. He's described as Kel Emunah Ve'ein Avel. El Emunah means a God of faith. What do you mean faith? God of faith. Who does God what? He can't be an atheist. That's I think logically impossible, right? So in whom does God have faith? So the Sifri tells us Shehe'emin be'olamo ubar'o. He believed in His world and then created it. In other words, God believed in the world because had He not believed and trusted that we could get where we're supposed to go, had He not believed in us and trusted that humanity could get to where it needs to get, He wouldn't have created us. You don't invest unless you have confidence. Right? You don't invest unless you believe in what you're investing. God invested in the world by creating it. So He's called El Emunah, the God of faith, because He believes in us, probably more than we believe in Him. And every morning, we actually say, first thing in the morning, we say, after yelling at the kids and telling people to shut off the alarm clock and so on and so forth, right, and close the window and turn off the light, whatever, but after all the etc., right, we say, Modeh ani lefanecha, I give thanks before you, Melech chai v'kayam, the King who exists and is living, who lives and exists, Shechazarta b'nishmati, you return my soul to me, b'chemla, with compassion, and we end, Rabba emunatecha, great is your emunatecha, great is your faith. What is the meaning of that? So Rav Kook explains the meaning of that is, great is your faith in us, in me. If I open my eyes this morning, what does that mean? It means that God believes that I can do what I'm supposed to do. Right? That's amazing. Right? And when the Jews, and one of the miracles of modern times is the fact that Jews, refugees, survivors, persecuted minority, would somehow, in the 3 years after the most tragic events that ever befell any people, probably, the Holocaust, would actually build a country. Not only build a country, but build a state which would become a successful state in so many ways. That's unbelievable. Jews that required two things. That required belief in God and that required belief in self. David Ben-Gurion, one of the first Prime Minister of the State of Israel and one of its founders, he's the person who read the Declaration of Independence, right? Etc., etc. David Ben-Gurion once said, if you live in Israel and you don't believe in miracles, you're not realistic. There's a story told in 1948, in the War of Independence, there was a Haganah commander in Tzfat. So Tzfat was a city that was surrounded by many Arab troops. The British had given all the fortified positions to the Arabs. As my teacher, Rabbi Moshe Shapiro, used to say, we had an English guy in our small group who he was teaching. He looks at him and he says, you know why the sun never set on the British Empire? The guy said, no, what? He says, because God doesn't trust them in the dark. So now you've got a group of a few hundred Haganah fighters, average age 18, 19, surrounded by a few thousand Arabs in fortified positions. A reporter asked the commander of the Haganah unit, do you expect to win this battle? And his response was, Becher. like duh, of course. And the reporter asked him, how? And he said, either through a miracle or through either naturally or miraculously, either way we're going to win. So the reporter asked, what would be a natural victory? So the commander said, a natural victory would be if God would send fiery angels down from heaven, scare the wits out of the Arabs, and they'd run like heck, and we would be able to be victorious. So the reporter said, no, I asked for the natural. That was the miraculous. He says, no, that was the natural. He said, what would be miraculous? So the commander said, what would be miraculous is if my 318-year-olds defeated 5,000 Arabs in battle. That would be a miracle. That would be a miracle. But so that is the nature of the state of Israel is a very Tu B'Av to 15th of Av component to it. It is a combination of belief. Hirgishu Ratzon Haboreh, we felt God's desire for us. V'siluk Chamato, the end of his anger. But in addition, as Maimonides says, He'eminu ba'atzmam, they believed in themselves. Ubitchu benafsham, and trusted in their souls. And that is not easy. I got to tell you, I was in the IDF, and I was not in a combat unit. I was just in the Rabbanut, Chief Rabbinate. I was part of Zach, which is Hebrew for Zihui Chalalim. But I am proud to say my two oldest sons served in combat units in the IDF. One was in field intelligence, one was in Givati, Rotem, he's a sharpshooter. And my 21-year-old son is in Israel now. He's starting service in 3 weeks. And hopefully in the paratroopers, if he gets in, he's a Becher, I'm sure we're getting. Right, so anyway. Yeah, I mean, I turned down Sayeret because I just preferred to be in the rabbinate. So anyway, but in his interview, when he was interviewed in the army, they asked him, because he's a foreign volunteer, he's coming from outside of Israel, he's volunteering for the army, so they always ask, what are you, crazy? But no, they don't ask it that way, but they say, what motivated you? So each son had different ideas, different motivations. Okay. So my 21-year-old Aryeh, he said, Jews have not had the opportunity and the ability to defend themselves for approximately 2,000 years. If we have the opportunity, I feel that I'm obligated to do so. Now, the Chayalet said, I've never heard that before. And it's interesting, I taught a class in poetry of the rabbis of Spain. This might come as a shock, but rabbis used to write poetry. In the Spanish rabbis, the great rabbis of Spain, Yehuda Halevi, of course, very, very famous, Shmuel Hanagid, Solomon ibn Gvirol, Avram ibn Ezra, and many, many others, wrote just magnificent, magnificent poems, just fantastic stuff. One of them His name was Shmuel Hanagid. My son picked up this idea from something that I said in a speech regarding Shmuel Hanagid. Shmuel Hanagid was both a rabbi and a poet. He was also commander of the Muslim armies in southern Spain. Highly unusual. And one of his poems is called Halinoti Gedud Balayla. Halinoti Gedud Balayla means I encamped my battalion overnight in the ruins of a castle. And I remember mentioning at the Shabbat table to my kid, I said, how many Jews, when Shmuel Hanagid said that was about the 12th century. I said for 1,000 years prior, no Jew had actually ever said such a word. That would have been inconceivable. I encamped my battalion. What? And for 1,000 years afterwards, approximately, it also didn't happen. With some exceptions, Sir John Monash, Commander-in-Chief of the Australian Army during the First World War, Jewish, right? Sir General Jacobs, famous Indian commander of forces in the Punjab, who actually defeated Pakistani forces with the creation of Bangladesh, Jew from Calcutta. But very rarely did you have such a situation. And it's unusual. And the idea that we have a state and an army is something which is pretty shocking. It's pretty shocking. Historically, this is unprecedented. That a nation which has not been we've been in an unnatural situation. Maharal, in his book, he has a book about, he was the first person to write books of Torah about topics. Until his time, no one had done this before. Books were written about commentary on this, a commentary on that, right? A treatise on one subject, but a book which treats topics. So he has a book called Netzach Yisrael. Netzach Yisrael means the eternity of Israel. There was a yeshiva called Netzach Yisrael. Anyone heard of Netzach Yisrael yeshiva? It was run by, the Rosh Yeshiva was Rav Gustman, who at the age of 18 was on the Vilna rabbinical court before the Second World War. So keep that in mind. On the Vilna rabbinical court, baked in Vilna before at age 18, he went to Israel. He suffered during the Holocaust. He came to Israel. He has a yeshiva. So someone asked him, "Where is your yeshiva?" So he opened up a chumash, Mikrat Gedolot, and he points to it. And the guy says, "What?" And he points to it, and he's pointing to a place where the commentary of the Ramban and the Ibn Ezra next to each other. Because his yeshiva is in Jerusalem, in Rechavia, on the corner of the street called Ramban and Ibn Ezra. So he says, there's my yeshiva right there. Anyway.
Scott Chednoff learned in that yeshiva.
Oh, okay. Great Scott. Okay, so anyway, Netzach Yisrael means the eternity of Israel. And it's the Maharal's book on the topic of exile. The Maharal begins the book by stating the following. He says, exile is unnatural. It's unnatural. It's unnatural for three reasons. He says because every nation has its place, its own country. He says the Jews, on the other hand, are scattered throughout the world. There are literally Jews all over the planet. At the time, the Maharal not, but yeah, pretty much, all over the world. Right? I'm leading a tour of India in a week and a half. Jews have been in India for over 1,000 years. There were Jews in China from the 11th century. There are Jews everywhere, right? It's unbelievable. So he says, number one unnatural component is people who are displaced from their land. Number two, he says every nation should be together. He says Jews are scattered. That's a separate issue. Number one, not on our land, on our own land. And number two, mufuzar u'mufarad bein ha'amim, scattered throughout the people. Families split apart, not together, scattered. And number three, every nation, he says, has the right of self-determination. It is unnatural that one nation should be subjugated to another nation. And he says the Jews have been subjugated to other people for thousands of years. So the Maharal begins his book about exile with the idea that exile is an unnatural state. He says unnatural situations will come back towards where they're supposed to be. So really, although the state of Israel is miraculous, but it's also natural. What I mean by that is, it's natural in the sense that where are Jews living? In their land. In their land. In a country where the places are part of our history. I remember doing guard duty in the army. I was in a place called Dotan. So basically, I was on 2 o'clock till 6 in the morning on a guard tower with a Russian soldier by the name of Yosef. So Yosef and I are standing there, and he says, "Lama nachnu po?" He says, "Why are we here?" I said, "Shmirah, duh, like we're doing guard duty." He said, "Lo, ma nachnu osim po b'Dotan." I mean, Dotan is like there's not much there. Yeah. So he said, "What are we doing in Dotan?" I said, "Shem shelcha Yosef. Ech ata yachol lish'ol et zeh?" I said, "Your name is Yosef. How could you possibly ask such a question?" He said, "I don't get you. What are you saying?" I said, "Who are you named after?" He said, "My grandfather." I said, "Okay. Who's he named after?" He said, "I don't know."
Stalin.
I said, "I'll tell you who. Probably not Stalin." I said, "I get paid to do jokes. Thank you." Right? So he says, "I don't know." I said, "I'll tell you who he's named after. He's named after Yosef, our ancestor. Joseph, who was sold by his brothers into slavery in Egypt. You're familiar with the story. And if you look in the Torah, you look in the Chumash, you'll see that the place where Yosef was when he was sold, I told Yosef, was Dotan. Vayelchu Dotaina, I'll translate Doisan. Right, so for those who don't. Right, so for the Dosims, Doisan. Right, anyway, so Vayelchu Dotaina, they were in Dotan. I said, so your ancestor, who actually planted the seeds of Jewish nationhood because he went to Egypt against his will, but he went to Egypt, he was sold here in Dotan. I said, later, when he died, his body was taken to Israel and buried. I said, do you know where? He said, no. I said, about 10 kilometers from here in Shechem. I said, and later in history, when the Jewish kingdom broke up into Judea in the south and Israel in the north, and the kings of Israel were anointed by the prophet Achia Hashiloni. I said, the kings of the northern kingdom were descendants of Yosef. I said, do you know where they were anointed? He says, I'm getting a pattern here. I said, yeah, I'll tell you. I said, on the road to Shechem, about 5 kilometers from here. I said, anyone called Yosef should not be asking what we're doing in Dotan. Because Dotan is your place. And if you look at the place names in the Torah, they've been preserved by Jews, by Arabs, by Christians. They've been preserved throughout history. And so number one, yes, it's miraculous that the Jews have come back to their country. This is highly unusual. This never happens. But it's natural that we're in our own land. Nothing could be more natural. Od yeshvu zakenim uzkenot b'chutzot Yerushalayim. Elderly men and women will one day sit, Zechariah tells us, in the streets of Jerusalem. I was visiting Israel 2 weeks ago. I have 3 married children and a bunch of grandchildren, and my son's going to the army, all live in Israel. And so we went to visit. I had a granddaughter there 2 weeks ago. And thank you. And we'll take presents later. So, but walking along in Ramat Eshkol, Rehov Paran, there must be about, I don't know, like 10 bakeries and the places, Zakenim or Zakenot, elderly people sitting b'chutzot Yerushalayim, the streets of Jerusalem. Children playing in Jerusalem. Nothing could be more natural than that. But nothing could be more miraculous than that at the same time. It's unbelievable. Pizur, Amufuzar Umufarada, people scattered and separate. Where are the Jews in Israel from? Name a country. That's where they're from. There are Jews in Israel from, again, I'm going to India, so I was looking, right, most of the Jewish population of India whether the Jews of Cochin, the Bnei Yisrael, or the Baghdadi Jews, 80% of them moved to Israel. All the Jews of Albania moved to Israel. You only hear of that when you Trivial Pursuit name 5 countries in Europe starting with an A. Like who's heard of Albania otherwise? Right? They moved to Israel. The Jews of Ethiopia, who according to the Radvaz and other commentaries are descendants of the tribe of Dan, who was exiled when the Assyrians exiled the 10 tribes, they're back in Israel. They're not supposed to be in Ethiopia, they're supposed to be in Israel. They're not supposed to be in Cochin, Kerala, Kolkata, Mumbai, etc. Right? The Jews, it's unbelievable. Even in China, I led 2 tours of China. So we went to a place, right, there are Jews who are from Kaifeng. Right? So Kaifeng was the ancient capital of China, and Jews moved there from Persia in around the 11th century. They completely assimilated because there was no anti-Semitism, they had no scholars, they were very far away from the other people. Their descendants are not technically Jewish. But here's something amazing. Approximately a dozen of the teenagers from the Kaifeng community moved to Israel, converted to Judaism, and are now living in Israel. So like, how far, right? And there are Jews from all over South America, from all over Europe, from all over the United States, even from New Zealand. There's a big cricket game in Becher every year. The Australian, New Zealand, English, and Indian Jews play cricket. No, there's South Africans as well. Correct? Yes. Sorry. Right, it was Freudian slip because I can't stand them. Right. So anyway, but they, it's unbelievable. So the Jews scattered and separate. No. What could be more natural than Jews related from all over the world should be together? But it's also miraculous. It's also miraculous when you consider where Jews have been, how long we have been separated, how long a family can be separated when you come together and say, oh, it's like we're starting over again. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely mind-boggling. The languages you hear in Israel. Well, I was in the army. I was in basic training. So we had about 100 people. I was in what's called Shlav Bet, which is people who go into the army into their profession, like older, right? So a bunch of us were going in as rabbis. There are a bunch of guys going in as lawyers. There were a bunch of guys going in as physicians. So we had like a 19-year-old Israeli kid trying to turn, let's say, 30-year-old, like 130-year-old Jewish professionals into soldiers. Right? Right? And not only that, but about half the group, the Russians couldn't speak Hebrew. There were a bunch of Americans who didn't speak Hebrew. So there were 2 guys doing simultaneous translation of the officer's commands into Russian and into Hebrew, into English. And on one side of me, I had an Ethiopian Jew who did not understand Hebrew, English, or Russian. And on my other side, I had a German Jew who did not understand those languages, although I did manage to get through with some Yiddish. Not one of the great military languages of the world. Nemen de M6 give a klap dorten. It's not exactly. So, they're translating the commands. So I remember, they made a big deal of, at the time, I don't think they do this anymore, but at the time we had a sisma. Sisma means a code phrase, code word. So I would say, if I see someone approaching the guard post, so I would say, Atzor sisma, which means stop, give me your code. Atzor, stop, sisma, code. The code was kapiot, kesef, which means silver spoons. He would say kapiot, I would say kesef. We both know we're good. All right, everything's dope, so that's fine. If he does not respond with the code, I then say to him, Wakif, wakif, wala ana batucha, which means Arabic, it means stop, or I'll shoot. Right? I say that in Hebrew and Arabic. Atzor ani yoleh, stop or I'll shoot. Right? Wakif, wala ana batucha. Right? Stop or I'll shoot in Arabic. Then, if he keeps coming, you fire a warning shot, shishim ma'alot, 60 degrees in the air. Then, if He keeps coming. You can now shoot him. Center of the body mass. Okay. So I'm trying to drill into my Ethiopian buddy and my German buddy. Right? Both the two most important things, which are the sisma, kapiot kesef, and the Arabic phrase, waqif walana batuha. Right? Stop or I'll shoot. Right? So I think I got it through to them. Anyway, I'm doing perimeter patrol, and I see the German is in the guard tower, and the Ethiopian is approaching. The German yells at him the one thing he remembered that I drilled into his brain, which was, he yells at him, Kapiot Kesef. He yells the code. The Ethiopian yells back at him the one thing he remembered, which was, Wakef! Right? Stop! In Arabic. The German figures, that sounds familiar, and he says, okay. That is a miracle. It's right. But the different languages coming together here. It's crazy. I mean, it's also miraculous that one of my sons, the one who was in Givati, he tells me that he says it's not miraculous, that well-trained, motivated soldiers, he says what's miraculous is that the bureaucracy behind us, all of that bureaucracy, the fact that even functions, that's a miracle. Because if you know anything about the Israeli army and the bureaucracy, it's unbelievable. Now, I'll give you an example. He has combat goggles, right? So he was in Gaza, whatever. So his goggles were like scratched up. So he goes to the Afsanaut. Afsanaut is the supply guy. It's usually a guy who's extremely overweight, smoking a lot, who has got connections to the mafia for sure. And he's sitting there, and he says, "Ma." So my son says, my goggles are scratched up. Can I get new goggles? He says, "Lo sfurim, lo machlifim." They're not broken, we don't switch them. My son says, listen. He says, I need to shoot, I need to see. Right? He's the unit sharpshooter. Right? He says, I can't see with this. He says, "Lo ichpatli." I don't care. "Lo sfurim, lo machlifim." So my son says, you can tell he's integrated. He says, okay. So he goes around to the side, takes the goggles, puts them on the ground, smashes them to pieces. Right? Picks them up, comes back and he says, Achshav, the guy says, "Beseder." I've got to say, that son is now a lawyer in Tel Aviv. So it makes sense. Remember, he came home, the army has a thing, there's lone soldiers, that is soldiers who volunteer from outside of Israel, whose families, parents live outside of Israel, they're called lone soldiers. The army has a lot of wonderful things they do for these guys. One of the things is that during their army service, they'll pay for a ticket back to their point of origin, so they can visit their family for a month. They do that. They also give them a stipend for an apartment, and every Yom Tov, they give them vouchers for clothing stores or food. Right? I remember my son got groceries for Pesach, right, delivered to, right, and another one got Coke. So anyway, so he came home. It was a surprise, actually. We did not know he was coming, and he turned. My daughter kept it a secret. She's a nurse in Israel, and he came to the door, and we were like, oh my God, unbelievable. Anyway, so a day or two later, he's walking around the house, and I say to him, Pinchas. He's wearing a t-shirt with his tzitzit over it. I said, Pinchas, don't you ever wash them? His tzitzit were green. I said, disgusting. He says, Abba, they're military tzitzit. I said, oh. They're supposed to be green. It wasn't like the mold. You know what I mean? It's like when the kids come back from camp, all the clothes are green. What's going on? So, but that's a beautiful thing. Military, I mean, the fact that it's natural, should be that way. It's also a miracle. So the second miracle is all these people gathering together, all these languages, all these cultures, all these ethnicities. So the Maharal says it's unnatural that we should be mufuzar, mufarad, scattered and separate. The fact that we're together, It's natural. But it's also miraculous. Isn't it miraculous? I mean, you think of how Jews have kept the spark of Jews, right, through thick and thin, throughout history. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Third component, Maharal says, is self-determination. Where he puts it, he says it's not natural that one nation should be meshubad, subjugated under another nation's control. And indeed, the right of self-determination, something supposed to be guaranteed by the United Nations Charter, as long as you're not Jewish. But indeed, we have that. And we haven't had that for years. But what could be more natural than Jews living in a Jewish state, controlling, right, that Jewish government and so on and so forth? That's normal, that's natural. But it's also miraculous when you consider the history of the Jewish people. Anyone who read the elegies, the kinot, the poems, the mournful poems that we read on Tisha B'Av, and you look at the litany and the list of events throughout history, it is mind-boggling that we're still here. It's mind-boggling that, but not that we're still here, but that we should, and revive it, and coming back to the land of Israel, and creating a country, and an army, and a successful economy, and hundreds and hundreds of yeshivas, probably a higher percentage of people learning in yeshivas than ever before, during the great academies of the medieval times of Sura and Pumbedisa, the two great yeshivas of Babylon, what we call today Iraq. Sura to the south of Baghdad, Pumbedisa to the north of Baghdad. These two great yeshivas, the heads of those yeshivas were known as the Gaonim. You may have heard of them. Some of them, Rav Saadia Gaon, Rav Hai Gaon, etc. Great people. How many people were in these yeshivas? In each of Sura and Pumbedisa, there were approximately 70 full-time students in each. There were 400 who would come twice a year for a month each, and the rest of the time they'd be working. And they'd gather together for a month each. But basically 70. I mean, do you know how many students there are in Mir? One of my sons learns in Mir Yeshiva, right, in Jerusalem. So how many students there are? I mean, 1,000. There are 5,000-6,000 students in the Mir. It's like unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I'll tell you, one of my sons was when he was learning in the Mir, he was in reserves. He got an emergency call-up. Thursday night, he gets a message on his cell phone, emergency call-up. Gets his stuff, goes to where his collection point. They go up to the Golan Heights. Syria, this is years ago, a mortar shell, now it's unfortunately there's a lot heating up, but a mortar shell had come into Israel from Syria. So the IDF decided, they have to respond. So they're going to send tanks in to destroy the mortar positions. And his unit was providing security, whatever, for the tanks. So he's up Friday, they got to Golan Heights like Friday morning sometime. They started setting up base perimeter security, etc., doing reconnaissance, etc. They finished setting all this stuff up by 2 a.m. Saturday morning. In other words, late into Friday night. At 2 a.m. he was in the Hesder unit, which is guys who are in yeshiva and in the army. So at 2 a.m. they did Kabbalat Shabbat. And they decided to do, that's the service on the inauguration of the Shabbat. And they did a Kalabach davening. 2 a.m. after working all through the day and half the night. And they had a beautiful davening. They went into wherever. They went Syria. They officially didn't go into Syria, of course, but they went into Syria. Right? And a lot of things that don't exist, but you're supposed to, right, It's like I was talking to my nephew is in the Air Force. He's a major. He's head of one of the drone units. So I asked him, so the drone's armed? He says, I can't say. I said, but yesterday, like an unarmed drone shot a missile in Gaza. He says, can't confirm or deny. Oh, he's a great cricket player, by the way. He's from Australia. He's my nephew. Unbelievable. Anyway, so, where was I? Right. So they went. They went in. They did what they had to do. They finished by Sunday morning. The commander of the unit said to them, he says, when I saw you guys in your tefillah, I heard you praying the middle of the night, Friday night. I said to myself, this is beautiful. He's a secular Jew, if there is such a thing. And he said, I said, beautifully, he says, I understood. This is why we are here. This is why we're fighting. Unbelievable. So that's miraculous, though. Isn't that miraculous? The fact that there are even Jews, and the revival, we talked about before, the revival of the Hebrew language. That's incredible. Here's a language which was used only in prayer for thousands of years. I mean, people could communicate. It was not so easy. People could communicate. I mean, we know that one of the authors of Tosfot, commentaries on the Talmud from 11th, 12th, 13th century France and Germany, one of them came to Cairo. Avraham, the son of Maimonides, mentions that he met a rabbi from France and they discussed Torah together. And he Hishta'ashaya b'Torati, he rejoiced in my Torah and I rejoiced in his Torah. And I thought to myself, well, what language were they speaking? Because Avraham, son of Maimonides, spoke Arabic, wrote in Arabic. The authors of Tosfot spoke French. They did not speak Arabic. But they wrote in Hebrew, and he also wrote in Hebrew. So they communicated in Hebrew, but it was not a common language. People did not use Hebrew. And yet, in the past 70 years, Hebrew is now a regular language. Right? It's unbelievable. Right? My grandson is here for summer. So one of my son and daughter-in-law and two grandsons here for summer. And I said something in Hebrew to my grandson Shlomo. And he says, you can't speak Hebrew. I said, Ani medaber. He says, Talo Yisraeli. Like, you're not from Israel. I said, what? I said, Shlomo. Dude, I'm speaking Hebrew. What do you mean? No, I can't speak Hebrew. No, I'm arguing with a 4-year-old. It's like, right. But it is somewhat. But is it natural that Jews should be speaking Hebrew? Yeah. Is it miraculous that Jews are speaking Hebrew? Absolutely. It's really both at the same time, and it is mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling. We have a situation also where there's in polls done in Israel with all the press you get, but the majority of Israelis have an affinity towards tradition. In fact, in a recent poll, over 60% of Israelis describe themselves as traditional. They celebrate some type of Friday night, Shabbat. They don't necessarily keep Shabbat in a technical sense, but they feel something. Yom Kippur, right? Very, very common. Very common. The army is kosher. That means every kitchen in the army has a supervisor, a mashkiach, and there's separate meat and milk. Technically, according to army rules, you're only allowed to cook meat. They cannot cook any dairy. Right? Everything is marked, etc. I remember I was in Bethlehem. I was Rabbi in the base there when we used to have a base there, and the army inspectorate came. So there's some guys inspecting weapons. One guy comes into the dining room. He goes through every single cutlery holder, and he finds, in a dining room for 400 people, he finds one dairy utensil amongst the 400. And he says, "Oh," he says to me, he says, "Mazeh." I said, "It's dairy." He says, "Lech tachshir et zeh." Go and kasher it. One of the inspectors. So because I'd learnt Yoredeya, which is the laws of kashrut, I said, the Ramah, Rabbi Moshe Isserles says that if you find a meat utensil amongst your dairy utensils, or vice versa, you don't have to kasher it. We assume it was just placed there by accident, right? And which happens. My 17-year-old son and I got back from Israel a week before my wife, so we were fending for ourselves for a week. It was rough, taking all the stuff my wife froze in the freezer out, heating it in the microwave and stuff like that. Following the instructions. She wrote very explicit instructions, like you'd write for a complete utter idiot, because she knows with whom she is dealing. And when we got back, so she's back, She says, Mordechai, is the parva pot, why is that in the meat? Says, I said, I didn't know where to put it, but we did wash it up, parv. And then, she keeps fine. But according to halach, you don't have to kasher it. So I said to him, I quoted him, the Ramah says, you don't have to kasher it. He says, with all due respect, Rabbi, the Shulchan Aruch is talking about a home with like 6-7 people, all of whom are concerned with kashrut, who may occasionally put something in the wrong place. He says, what would the Shulchan Aruch say about an army base of 400 guys, most of whom don't really know or care that much about kashrut? Do you think it'd be the same? I said, yeah, you may have a good point. You may have a good point. So I kashered it. The army, in one of the most amazing logistical operations of the Israeli army, is kashering the entire army for Pesach every year. You have no idea. You think it's bad when you've got kids and your husband who are hungry while you're kashering? Imagine if they all had automatic weapons. I'm hungry, I want a peanut butter sandwich. You'll have to wait, I'm kashering. I ain't waiting, lady! So because I was in the rabbinate, I would get called up 2 days before Pesach to go and kasher. So I get called up, it's 3 days before Pesach, and I go to the place where my meeting place, which is in Becher. We get on the bus, they take us to another base, right? We go further all the way to the Golan Heights. We go up to the Golan Heights. So I'm in the Golan Heights. They say here, that's your jeep, and they go to the jeep. They say, you are kashering this base. They give me the command. I say to the driver, I said, wait, the two of us are kashering an entire base ourselves? He said, what two of us? He says, I'm the driver, man. My job is to drive you from here to there. Kashering is your problem. It's like, it's unbelievable. I have to kasher it entire. I'm overwhelmed. It's unbelievable. I get to the base. Turns out there's basically an ammunition dump. And there's like 5 soldiers who come from a nearby base who just basically stay there and guard it. So I say, is there a kitchen? They said, no kitchen, no dining room. I said, what do you do? We get food in a crate from the other base every day and we eat. I said, show me the crate. I said, great. By orders, this must be outside the gate by, 10 o'clock tomorrow. Right? I looked around. Right? There's no kitchen, there's no dining room. I say, good, make sure everything is cleaned up. Just, sweep the floor where you eat, and etc. And I said, great, base is kosher. I get home 10 o'clock at night. Right? My wife says, great, you're home early, you can help with the cleaning. I said, are you kidding? I said, I kashered an entire base myself. Women can be so unreasonable. But the fact that happens, that's pretty wild. And there's a sign on the door that says, Asur lachnis chametz bipkudah, which means no chametz may be brought in. Bipkudah means by order, by command. Right? It means you get, and what was interesting was that a lot of soldiers who did not necessarily look religious would volunteer to help us kasher. They were interested. They said, oh yeah, we do this at home. My grandparents do this. It's like, there's a feeling there. I remember Rosh Chodesh Adar, the month of Adar, which is the month of Purim, very happy month. So I was actually, when I was in Beit Lechem for a month, actually I was sleeping at home because they had this tent, a 16-man tent, and 15 of them were smoking. Now, thank God, smoking is banned. But at that time, this is like, 30 years ago, so everyone smoked in the army. It was like crazy, right? So in the tent, you got to understand, it's a tent. There's 2 kerosene heaters. It was winter, and there's 15 people smoking. I walked in there. I couldn't breathe. I literally could not breathe. I said to the commander, whose name was Dudu. That's like David Dudu. I said, Dudu. I said, I can't sleep here. I can't breathe. I don't smoke. I never have smoked, right? Tobacco, and I can't. Right? So he said, you know what? He says, where do you live? I said, Hanof. So he takes the calculation. He says, good. Can you be here 7 o'clock every morning? I said, yeah. He says, done. Sleep at home. Okay, fantastic, unbelievable. So I slept at home. So anyway, Rosh Chodesh Adar, the first day of the month of Adar, my wife made a huge container of chocolate chip cookies. She said, take it to the base, give it to the soldiers. I said, oh, so embarrassing. She says, do it. And I said, yes, do it! Right, okay. So I take it to the base, and there is the commander of the kitchen. His name was Mickey. This is actually Mishmar HaGvul, which is the border police. So Mickey was described to me in Hebrew in the following way. Mickey lo nolad, banu oto. That means Mickey was not born, he was built. Lakhu barzel, samu boragim geves. Right, they took metal, they put in screws, they put on plaster, yatsa Mickey. Mickey comes out. So Mickey's like... So I go over to Mickey and I say, and he says, Mazah. I said in Hebrew, chocolate chip cookies. He says, Bishvil ma, why? I said, Rosh Chodesh Adar. He says, yafeh. So he pulls a kippah out of his pocket, holds it in his hand, goes into the dining room with this big thing of cookies, walks over to the first soldier, slams the kippah on the guy's head. He says, Kach. The guy takes one, right, and he says, Tagid bracha. And the guy's like, I've never seen a bracha said with such fear of God. Very impressive. But this actually is one of the features, right? It is. But is it natural that they should have cookies on Rosh Chodesh Adar? Yeah. Is it miraculous that here's someone from Philadelphia, my wife, right, who is living in Israel with her husband from Australia, right, and they're baking cookies for a guy, Mickey, from Morocco, who is serving in Beit Lechem at the Jewish army, which actually had, in that particular unit, had many Druze. It's bizarre, but that is actually what it should be. That's natural, but it's also miraculous in an amazing way. Right. And the miracles go on, and I'm going to end just with one story. A good friend of mine from Toronto, actually, he went to the Israeli army. His Hebrew was almost non-existent. His Hebrew was atrocious. And grenade practice. So there's these sandbags, you jot down, there's an officer there. He asks you if you're right or left-handed, because you don't want to be, it's not the type of thing you want to be juggling, right? You want to put correctly into the hand that you're going to throw, right? So he asked my friend, Yemini, which means right-handed, right? My friend thought, why is he asking me if I'm a Yemenite? He says, Yemini. So my friend says, Ashkenazi. The officer looks at him like, this guy's insane. And the officer goes, Yemini. My friend says, Toronto. Now, what's even more shocking is the officer gave him the grenade anyway. But again, that is part of the miracle of the state of Israel. That's what we're appreciating. You mentioned the miracles that happened, and these miracles happen again and again and again. We are, in the words of Rabbi Shapiro says, Anachnu po ba'aretz melumadim b'nisim. Meaning, melumadim b'nisim, we are accustomed to miracles. But as you also said, we cannot dare take them for granted. There was Sol Bellow, wrote a great book, To Jerusalem and Back, I think it's called. At the end of the book, he says, Israel is a normal country, like any other country. You can take anything for granted, except existence. Very well said. We can take everything for granted except existence. Our very existence we cannot take for granted. We have to give thanks to Hashem. We have to appreciate His faith in us in being able to build, His faith in us in being able to go forward. And we have to also appreciate the Jews who give everything in order to build Israel, the members of the IDF, the members of the security forces, the people who are living, who are running the farms and the yeshuvim, and the people learning in yeshiva, and the people learning kol, and people running the government, the people running the grocery stores, and the physicians and the nurses and everything else. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And all of that is what we call a ma'arechet of nisim, a framework of miracles. But it's also, those miracles come to give the most natural thing that there is, which is the Jews in our own land, together, self-determined. That really is the most natural thing there should be, but it's also the greatest miracle. That's what we come together tonight to appreciate, those miracles. Halavai, we should all next year not have Tisha B'Av, or have Tisha B'Av, but have it as a celebration, B'vias Mashiach Tzidkenu, with the coming of our Messiah, to complete the process of redemption. B'mheira v'yameinu, amen. Be happy to take questions, heckling, alternate, political statements, endorsements, etc.
I have to say, I'm baffled about one thing you said. You talked about marvelous miracles and so forth. And in a lecture you gave once, you talked about the incomprehensibility of American football, sitting with your sons. And this, as I thought about it, 2-3 hours of an event, and here you are mentioning cricket. I was once explained that cricket is a game best played 4 days long.
Yes.
This is an American made my brain explode through my ears.
5 days of test.
5 days. Your Honor, I'd like you to explain.
Well, I've got to tell you, the joke is on me. I'll tell you why. Because my son, Pinchas, who I was watching football with, when guy was in the army, he's the lawyer, lives in Ramat Eshkol, so he actually joined the Israeli Football League. There's a Kraft Stadium. He used to play for the Jerusalem Lions, I think it was. A tight something. Tight end, I think, some bizarre thing like that. I don't know what he's doing. And my other son's a big football fan, so it's you know what I mean. It's a joke is on me. None of them really like cricket, but what can I do? But I hear what you're saying. The key to enjoying a 4-day cricket match is to be completely and utterly sloshed the entire time. Is that not correct, sir? You're from South Africa? No? Oh, you just know cricket.
Too much time in country that drives me more.
Oh, okay. Yes. Any other legitimate questions? I'm sorry. No. Okay, great. Thank you very much for coming. Okay, we'll see.
I don't want to. I don't think it's relevant. Do you have an opinion why President Trump personally moved the embassy to Jerusalem? Serious question. No, serious question.
Well, he didn't actually move it, you know.
I know. All he did was put a sign embassy on the consulate.
That's right. You know, the consulate is still there. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't really enough about American politics. I'm an immigrant, so I've got to be careful. So tough. Oh yeah, very nice. Thank you, my regards. I lived in Toronto for 3 years.
I just heard it's Russia. I'm pretty close to this. Stop there.